let's get to today's topic. Joining us are Iris Nevins, CEO of Umba Daima NFT Studio, Noemi Shinanga, photographer and filmmaker, James Williams, founder of Kofibi Incorporated, and our moderator today is Leisha Barrison, VP of Marketing at Impact Museums. And just a quick reminder, please submit your questions via the Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom screen at any time during the session. We'll address as many questions as we can towards the end of the discussion. Now, I'm going to turn this conversation over to Leisha. Welcome, Leisha.
Thank you. Good to see everyone. Good morning, good afternoon. As Andrea mentioned, I'm Leisha Barrison, VP of Marketing at Impact Museums, and I am so pleased to introduce our panelists today. We have such an exciting conversation coming up around not only creators of color in the NFT space, but also Web3 in the future, kind of where we see everything going. I'm going to allow everyone to kind of introduce themselves because they're much more accomplished than I am. And we can just start with James because he's in my Brady Bunch square right below me.
Excellent. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Well, thank you. I'd like to thank you for the invite first. I think this is wonderful. I was very excited to join. I'm James Williams, founder of Kofibi, a bunch of geeks doing stuff, some within NFT and some with blockchain. And I'm happy to be here and join the panel.
Awesome. Noemi.
Hello, everyone. My name is Noemi Shinanga. I'm a photographer and filmmaker based in New York. Just entered the NFT space. Is very new for me, but my first project is centered around color theory. So I highlight, a lot of my archived work and categorize them based on their colors. So you have yellow, red, blue, and green. And so I'm here sharing my new experience, but also just learning so much as an artist. So I look forward to this conversation.
Amazing. And Iris.
Hey, my name's Iris Nevins. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Umba Daima. Umba Daima is an NFT studio and community. We're focused on building one of the largest and most diverse global NFT communities. We believe that in order for people to thrive in Web3, we need to collaborate. And so we aim to essentially facilitate collaboration, knowledge sharing, and more through various programs that we run for our community members.
Amazing. Thank you so much for joining us today. As everyone can tell, we've selected a panel of really creative and innovative people on a different side and spectrum across the expanse that is Web3. And I've already heard a lot of buzzwords that I think a lot of people are unfamiliar with. So I would love to start with just a general question to all three of you. In a simple sentence, why do we think that Web3 is the future, and how do we start to kind of learn more about how to engage there? James, we can start with you.
Sure. Yeah, when I think of Web3, it's hard to think of Web3 without thinking of what Web 1.0 and 2.0 represent. And I think if you can think, the thought exercise that I sort of use is Web.1 is geeks creating websites. It's static, it's read-only, no one really knows about it. But the interesting thing about Web 1.0 is you still owned your content because only engineers would create the websites. Then comes Web 2.0, where you have things like Facebook and Google. And so the regular people are now interacting and they can post their own data. Largely speaking, your data is owned by a technical company or big technical company. What Web3 represents to me is ownership. I think one of the biggest things about the blockchain and Web3 in general is that you now possess and own your content, which is largely what NFTs represent. So thinking of a future where you own your content, where you can interact with other people, where the data that you put on the blockchain, if you will, is assigned to you and it's something that you own.
Amazing. Iris, how do you feel about that?
I think it's an amazing turn in the history of the internet and society as well. I think what's beautiful about being able to own your content is the fact that communities around the world, particularly Black and Brown communities and impoverished communities, don't have a lot of physical wealth, right? They don't have, a lot of land or, natural resources per se that they can sell or monetize, but they do have intellectual property. And so, this new web, this new age of the internet allows for these communities to have a way to monetize some of the amazing art and creativity, fashion, music, dance, et cetera, that these communities are generating. And I think that it's going to be a huge game changer when it comes to leveling the playing field.
I mean, we talk about Black artists, and Noemi, you're squarely in that community as well. As someone that's kind of on the uptick of trying to get into this massive industry, how has it been challenging or enlightening for you to kind of figure out how to pair your artistic tendencies with the technology side? It seems really overwhelming and hard to get in there, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say the best word is intimidating. Because you don't want to do the wrong thing. You're trying to figure out, especially with artists, everything is a process, and we're very particular about our process. So it's like, how am I able to integrate an art form that I'm really used to into a digital space, even though everything feels digital, but I don't want to lose sight of the tangible aspect of seeing a photo, feeling it, seeing it on a wall. So it's been, to be honest, there's been some internal conflict of am I contributing to something that is changing art in a way that maybe a lot of artists don't want? I don't know. But at the same time, to Iris's point, it's we are heavily already in a digital space. And it's clear how easy remixes and sharing of content or of art can be shared without its original owner or creator being acknowledged. So I think, I don't know, I'm hopeful, I think the only reason I've kind of entered this space is more so curiosity, but also just a lot of hope of, maybe there is a way where we can connect the dots of who created what and they actually receive the actual benefits of what they made.
Yeah, I think in some of our pre-meeting calls, I think, James, you brought up a really great point where you kind of want to pair tech people with artists to help get to a place where they can support themselves in a marketplace that Iris is building. How would you recommend kind of that pairing happen? Where do we meet these people? How do we start to create this collaboration so that we can lift up more artists in the space?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. Unfortunately, I think there's a lot of craziness out there in terms of how do you connect with these communities. I think especially for people of color. Being in the geek space is a little bit easy because we're used to trolling Discord, trolling Twitter, finding out information about new technologies and sort of how to get involved. Largely, it's been literally up 2 in the morning, you're on a particular Discord channel and an NFT is about to drop, or you're following a particular person on Twitter. In terms of connecting with tech resources specifically, I think Twitter is great. Having someone who can be your Sherpa, I think, is a big deal. Someone who's really going to show you, how these things work. And I think Noemi brings up a good point. How do you know as an artist that you really own your NFT? If you look at the blockchain and you see the NFT, how do you know it's yours? And what does it mean if someone right clicks and saves? And I think having someone with you technically, I think there's more ownership and more safety than a lot of people believe. But I'd be lying if I say it wasn't a bit of the wild, wild west out of there.
It feels like a full-time job. As someone that has a full-time job but tries to dabble in the space, I mean, Discord and Twitter, it feels like things are happening so quickly. And if you're not on it all the time, you'll miss something really critical. I mean, I think, how do we start to find the time, or how do we start to sift through the madness of it all to kind of identify and create more discovery?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of, one of the things that I've done is not recommended, but I've actually tuned my Twitter to sift through the noise. And so, kind of curated my own list of people that I'll listen to. Like Finematics, I think, is a great resource if you're looking for a YouTube channel. I think Bankless is probably the best if you're sort of thinking about what does DeFi mean. And I think Whiteboard Crypto is also an excellent resource. Now, I probably went through more than 50 resources before I found, what are good resources to explain this to the layperson. So how do I take my mom, who's extraordinarily bright, but explain all this technical jargon so that she feels safe and she thinks that these NFTs are not just funny apes and pictures that don't really mean anything to the universe. Discord, going back to Noemi's point, horribly crazy intimidating. You turn on Discord, you tune into NFT, you have no idea what they're talking about. It looks like the dark web. There's a lot of cray people out there. But one of the things that I've done is curated resources that I'll share, which is here's your starter pack on YouTube videos that you can follow.
Amazing. Iris, I'm curious about how you also identify the artists that you work with. Is there kind of like a standard or integrity, or what's the ethos of Black NFT art?
Good question. So it really ranges. Black NFT art is a sub-brand within our larger community. So Black NFT art focuses specifically on promotion and events for Black creators. And so when it comes to promotion, we have a free service where as long as you identify as Black, you can submit your art and we'll promote it on Instagram and Twitter. We don't curate that, right? We're not looking to see whose art is high quality or fits specific standards, as long as it's not offensive. But outside of that, we do curation for various clients, and we also do our own NFT projects that we have in the works. And so for that, it's really important that we identify artists that have been active in the space. One of the things that we've seen is that artists will come in with a lot of excitement, and there's always a percentage that don't end up staying very long, or they're not very consistent. And so there isn't a true commitment to the NFT space. You have to think of the NFT space as a new industry. So even if you have an audience in a previous audience, to some extent, you have to either transfer that audience into NFTs or create a whole new audience. And so we're really kind of focused on artists who have shown some sort of commitment to that process, so that we know that when we bring what we bring to the table, it's going to be a good match that's able to bring real results.
Noemi, how is that process for you? I feel like sometimes I hear artist friends say that, it's just a JPEG. It's, it feels like it's Web 1, as you're interpreting your art form into the NFT space, how are you thinking about your approach into what that manifests as?
Oh, that's a great question, because that's honestly the question I've been asking myself. Like, the question of like, should I photograph or have a project specifically for NFT? Or, there's been conversations about people identifying as an NFT artist, and I'm like, well, what does that mean? Like it's tough. I think the biggest thing for me is making sure I come from a place of authenticity and not just, just not coming off as like shallow, or just like trying like as a side project just to get money or whatever. Like, to Iris's point, it is a huge commitment. Being in Twitter spaces, being in clubhouses, introducing yourself on the internet, like listening in to different conversations, having the bandwidth to listen in on those conversations. Like, sometimes I don't want to be on my phone all the time. I don't want to be on a screen all the time. Like, unfortunately, there are, some in-person NFT meetups, but yeah, it's been fascinating to try to figure out what the approach should be and to essentially take, I mean, it's everything Iris is saying, I'm like resonating because it's hitting you. And not many people explain that part once you enter in, where it's just like, you either have to introduce yourself or reintroduce yourself. And in that introduction, it's in a completely different way. Like, I can't really share my work the way I used to. Like, there's a lot more intention, there's a lot more thought on like what my project means. And honestly, that's still a benefit in all mediums because you still have to talk about your work regardless of the platform. So it's been an interesting journey figuring out my approach. And to be honest, I'm still figuring it out. But my technique on doing that is just hearing how other artists speak on theirs. And then hopefully in that process, I can find my voice in the NFT space.
Fair enough. I know it's I feel like it's also intimidating, to your earlier point, to even get in on some of the drops. It feels like now a lot of the like hotter ones you read about on Twitter, it's mostly whitelisted prior. It gets really expensive incredibly quickly. I mean, how do we start to navigate for like the more amateurs of the group to kind of get in on the fun? I mean, what are the recommendations on how to get in without losing too much cash up front, or again, just like feeling like you have to be stationed at your computer at like 6 a.m. to kind of try to get in on something? Iris, maybe you have a perspective on that since you're helping to generate some of that demand.
Sure. I think it's important to pick projects that you really care about and that you're really excited about, because when you're coming at it from that perspective, whether you really like the art or you really like the mission or you believe in the team, I think it makes all of the other difficulties or frictions easier to deal with. So for example, if there's a project where there's a lot of demand, and it's not a project that you believe in, then it's gonna be frustrating to have to go through whatever hoops you have to go through to get pre-sale access. But if you're really excited about the project, then you're not gonna mind following whatever steps are required to be able to get one of those pre-sale spots. I would say also there are a number of projects out there that don't have a lot of traction yet that will likely have traction eventually. One example is Boss Beauties. Boss Beauties was sitting under half an ETH for months. You could buy pieces for 0.2, 0.23 ETH. Even Crypto Chicks was sitting around that 0.2, 0.3 ETH mark for months. And those are both projects that I bought into when they were really low because I really like them. And then months later, they ended up taking off, and now they're, hovering around the 1.5 to ETH floor. But I bought those projects and I held on to them because I genuinely like them. And so I think that taking that approach is the best approach that I can recommend. If someone is really just in it to try and flip and make, just make quick money, it's not impossible. It can be done, but it's really a whole different process, a whole different mindset. It's probably going to be a lot more time and labor intensive, right? Just as if you were like a day trader on the stock market. Day traders, those are real jobs. You can't just kind of get up and go on vacation and not pay attention to the stock market, right? So it's really about knowing like what your goals are, what you want to accomplish, and also how much time you have to commit to whatever your goal is.
Feels like I think the most common comparison is streetwear. Sometimes you're just waiting in line for hours to get that Supreme drop, and you know what I mean. It's quick. You got to do your research. That's right. Okay, I wanted to get to like the meat of it all, which is helping to create more discovery, especially for Black and brown folks or just any sort of creators of color. I think in the crypto space, it feels like early social media where the youngest employees asked to find out who is hot, just based off of their friends of friends. It feels like it could be quite an insular community and a little bit homogeneous, right? So, in this world, there's like this belief that we're democratizing access and allowing for more discovery, especially with underserved communities. I mean, do we feel like that's true? Are we finding that we're creating a more diverse market, or is it still kind of hard to break through? Noemi, I'll start with you actually, as an artist yourself. Do you feel like you're better represented or able to kind of create more access for yourself, or is it still kind of a struggle?
Unfortunately, it's still a bit of a struggle. And I think that's also why entering the NFT space can feel a bit defeating, just because it's even hard in person, like there's still so much work to be done in, introducing myself to individuals or brands or museums, and like everything is self done, like I don't really have a team or support. And like, to James's point, having a tech pairing with an artist would be amazing. And like that, but that doesn't even exist in real life. Like some people are represented, and like I'm very, very curious how that would translate in the NFT space. Like, are there going to be artists that are represented, and in that team, you have a tech who advises, hey, you should drop at this time, or you should, like, that would be incredibly dope. But there's already like a setback in real life of getting discovered. And so I think that's also what's added into the difficulty. It's like, I'm still trying to find a rhythm of having that discovery or that referral, and like, how does that translate in the NFT space? So I don't know, there's still so much work to be done personally.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that a lot of the tech in general is a bit of a fraternity. And I think when you look at, the NFT space and you look at blockchain in general, it's very much starting like Web 1.0 and 2.0 as well. If you know, maybe you in 2.0, if you worked for a web giant and you were inside and you had your stock package, maybe then you knew what was happening and you were sort of tuned into the matrix. But one of the reasons I'm involved here is because I'm sort of seeing that same pattern where, most of my friends, most of my community, most of my Black friends, just to put it out there, don't know about NFT drops. They don't know the vernacular. They're unaware. Insanely brilliant people that are just not part of the jargon fraternity. And one of the things that I think in hammering home what Noemi's saying, I think we got to work together. I think it's forums like this, what ThinkLA is pulling together. And I think it is not always about trying to make money. It is pairing a technical resource with someone like Noemi and saying, okay, I'm going to walk you through exactly how to do this. You're not going to lose your wallet. This is the right way to do it. And I think Iris would agree with me here. There's a lot of disastrous NFT drops in terms of people getting their money stolen, or it's just not done in a professional way. So I think what you guys are doing here and sort of bringing us together is the way to start. Not a bunch of money grabbers, but hey, let's get together and let's put great art out there.
Iris, how are you finding that you found like the golden children that are both artistic and have the tech savviness? How are you finding those people are acquiring these skills, or how are you helping create that accessibility for your community?
Well, for anyone who's coming into this space as a new person, it requires a lot of listening and a lot of trial and error. So, our community and our company, we provide spaces for people to listen and learn and share knowledge. We have 5 weekly events that we host online on Twitter Spaces and Clubhouse. So everything from intro to NFTs to artist hangouts. We have an NFT hangout, we have an artist spotlight, And so these are all spaces that people can come and they can hear other people's stories. How did they get started? How did they grow? What are their strategies, right, for promotion or marketing? You know, in our Intro to NFTs weekly event on Sundays, people ask a lot of basic questions about how do I mint? Where do I mint? What are gas fees? What are marketplaces? Like, these are questions that people need to be consistently seeking answers to. And sometimes there's different answers, right? And so I think it's important for people to take that time to investigate, to do their research, and to get to a point where they feel like they have a good sense of what the steps are. And then you start taking the steps. And along the way, you know, the best way to learn is just by doing. So along the way, you'll probably make mistakes, or you'll probably realize that you know, minting, you thought you understood all of the steps of minting, but then once you went through the process, you realized that there was this one key piece of information that you didn't get, but now you've learned through experience. And so, yeah, it's really just about listening, learning, taking that time to do your research, and then trying it out. I think a lot of people will kind of be in a hurry to try it out without taking that time to listen and learn first. And I think that's when we see people get really frustrated, because they may lose a lot of money or lose a lot of time, or they release a project and they're really disappointed or frustrated because the project isn't successful. And it's like, well, do you know anyone in the NFT space? Do you have anyone, do you know any collectors? Do you have anyone in the NFT space that you could share your project with? If the answer is no, then you probably shouldn't be releasing NFTs. And you probably should, I mean, I've seen people come in and drop 100 NFTs like all at once. And it's like, who's gonna buy it? You have no audience. You haven't taken the time to actually build that audience or build those relationships. So I think people need to kind of avoid the sense of FOMO and just focus on understanding and trying things out before they kind of go all in.
Yeah, it's interesting that, you know, I wanted to get to that as well. I'm seeing a lot of, you know, we have a lot of advertising and marketing people on the line here. I think everyone's trying to attach their brand to an NFT, and a lot of the times they're self-made or self-priced, and it can seem quite intensive. Like, I just saw that Andrew Yang dropped an NFT, and it's like an insane price to kind of gain access to something, and it sometimes feels like it's maybe unfounded. How do we feel about like the pricing strategies? How do people go in and find the right price? Is it just comparisons, or, you know, how do we provide that resource?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of research. I think that Iris can probably speak to this as well. I think there are a lot of people that they're part of the initial minting, right? So, you know, where the first NFT is created. So once you drop it, I've seen people buy it and 5 minutes later list it for 10 ETH, right? And so if you're not paying attention to the floor price on something like OpenSea, and you're not doing comparables, it's easy to sort of jump into a project and just realize, you know, you bought this thing that has no intrinsic value, you know, over a period of time. So I think we're at that point. I always say this about where we in the NFT space, we're at that point where in 2.0 we were still saying go to http://www.blah.blah.blah.com. That's where we are in this space. It's still filled with a lot of geeky jargon, but I think in terms of pricing, it takes a lot of research. I've been part of a bunch of minting. I've helped people mint, and it takes an enormous amount of research to make sure that you trust the organization, trust that you're doing the process the correct way. You know, how many NFTs? Is it 10,000? Is it 5,000? Why? And that just sort of backs your way into a concept called tokenomics, where I agree with Iris. You don't rush into this. You start with research first.
Fair enough. How do we feel about the brands kind of coming in? You know, my perspective is always, and the genesis of this discussion was, instead of kind of tasking your creative agency to kind of come up with some JPEGs is to really find and identify artists that have a mission that aligns with your own and kind of empowering them as opposed to adding more noise. Do we feel like that is a viable option? Iris, what is your perspective on that?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
Just brands coming into the space and trying to mint their own NFTs. Ideally, what we do is have them attach themselves to maybe artists that align as opposed to adding more noise to the space, or is it just, you know, a passing trend for brands to kind of try to get into this?
Yeah, you know, there's, of course, these brands they're going to see the money that's being made and they're going to want to participate just like anyone, and they have the resources and the capital to do it and to do it well. So I think it's really, I think the brands are going to come no matter what. I think the question is, are they going to come and respect the culture and the ethos that has been built? Or are they going to come and disrupt it? And I think one of the beautiful things about this space is it's been allowing artists that have been traditionally either undiscovered or unrecognized to have a larger platform. And so I think there's a lot of opportunity here for brands to continue that work of elevating artists and elevating creators and even companies and communities that have created the space that we see today versus coming in and really kind of pushing the pioneers out.
Yeah, the last thing I want to see is like a banner ad, like 300 by 250, just minted as an NFT. I think no one really wants that. So, you know, Noemi, if a brand came to you and said, listen, we want to collaborate with you on a project, what would that look like for you? Would you consider it?
In this current stage, no. Just because I have to be, you know, like to my point, like I have to be authentic. And so if I don't really feel stable in the space yet, which I don't currently, then I just wouldn't think it's wise to enter into something prematurely. So yeah, I mean, like I guess my biggest hope is that there isn't a system that's mimicked that we already are experiencing in person, which is where it's like, you know, everyone refers to the Black Square moment. Like all of a sudden there's just this need and attention. It's like, can you be a guest on my podcast? Can you do this? And it's just like, do you actually want me, or are you, you know, filling a quota? And so I really need to feel that genuine authenticity. And so I would say for now, a situation where I would be possibly say yes is if a brand came to me, approached me, and also provided education, you know, to Iris and James' point, where it's just like, hey, we're going to have someone kind of guide you along this process, you know, teach you throughout the whole journey of creating this project, just so it doesn't feel like a one-off thing, but they also want to implement knowledge for me, just like for myself moving forward. So I would say that's probably the only situation where I would be like, you know, I would actually take it on. But in this current stage with where I'm at, I just don't think it would be wise.
Yeah, I could see that. Not to confuse with crypto tokens, but you don't want to be tokenized for your art and exploited for your Blackness in an opportunistic time. But, you know, I think every brand is trying to figure out a way to kind of get their piece of this market. I read a report that said that the NFT market's, you know, forecast to be 80 billion by 2025. So, you know, how do we more authentically come to artists and producers and tech people and say, listen, we want to be a part of this and align our goals to be authentic? It's tough. Okay, I know that we're getting a lot of questions and maybe we can follow up in writing so that people can write it down, but all three of you, any favorite Discord channels, Twitter Spaces, Clubhouse channels that you're really kind of tuned in on these days?
Yeah, I think for me, being the guy that's always up in the middle of the night following, I find a lot of helpful information on Bankless on YouTube. If you're interested in sort of what does DeFi even mean?
Yeah.
And you got to start from the beginning, because they do come from a perspective where, you know, you're already involved in the blockchain. If you're looking for beginning resources, Finematics, I think, is a really good, you know, they do the drawings on the screen to say, you know, this is what all of this means. In terms of NFT projects, one that I like is Little Hippo. And one of the reasons that I like Little Hippo is because I believe in what they're doing. So these are the hip hop hippos, something I grew up during the hip hop era. But most importantly, I think what they're doing is they're really explaining it. They're taking their time to make sure that people can get in, and it's not a full ETH or 10 ETH. But they're taking the time to really explain it to people and making it a safe space for people to learn. So I'm all in because of their approach.
Iris, any favorite channels you want to share with the group?
Let's see. You know, that's a good question.
That's pretty on the spot.
I'm honestly so focused on my company and our brand that I haven't been spending much time attending other events or spaces. So I can speak to what we do. If you go to umbadaima.com, you can find our blog. We have resources. We have an education section. We have a podcast. We also have weekly events on Twitter Spaces and Clubhouse. If you go to our Twitter account, you can find our schedule, and you can, you know, we don't have links available ahead of time. These platforms limit how much you can create links ahead of time. So if you just know that on the same day, same time, every week, these events are happening, you can put it in your schedule. There's also a link on our website to subscribe to our community calendar so that you can see our events in your own Google Calendar. So I would say attend those events if you're interested. We have, again, artist spotlights. We sometimes spotlight projects that are happening by various folks in the community and collaborations that we're involved in. We spotlight artists. We have educational events. We've also launched an educational series here in Atlanta. We're doing a monthly workshop and a monthly social. And the events are sponsored by Flow and Dapper Labs. And so we're really excited to be partnering with them. We have various people from their ecosystem that are helping to facilitate these workshops and educate folks on the different processes and steps involved with minting and selling NFTs.
Love it. Sounds like you're so busy creating content. I don't know how you have extra time to listen to more content. Noemi, how has your education journey been? Do you have any tips for those that are eager to kind of join you on their education journey as well?
For me, fortunately, it's just been my peers. A good friend of mine, Laurent Chevalier, has, you know, been my low-key NFT mentor. And so I follow the artists first, and then, you know, if they have any projects, if there are any spaces, I kind of listen in on them. So for now, my education has just been peer-to-peer. So for anyone who's interested in specific artists, and you find that they're also in the NFT space, if they're guests in, you know, Twitter spaces or clubhouses, I think that could be an interesting start because you already have common ground with that individual. So that has been my approach so far.
Okay, great. So, you know, there is a question in the chat. I'm curious if anyone has a perspective. You know, have we seen any brands effectively kind of tap into the NFT space? And I know it's an on the spot question, so if you don't have any, that's fine, and we can follow up. But you know, have we seen anyone do it right? Just curious to the group if you've seen anything that you found interesting.
I actually think that I've heard sort of the opposite. I think the blockchain, crypto in general, and NFT, it really is a community that has a very specific culture. So it's interesting if you don't do it right, you know, you kind of get on the outs very quickly. And even though it's about making money, the interesting thing is you can't be a business walking into the culture going, written on your shirt, I'm here to exploit you and make money off of a quick NFT drop. So I think it's very interesting. I haven't seen a major brand where I've been impressed, where I'm like, you know what, they've done it right. They're here for the right reasons.
Fair enough. There was also a really great question about art law issues. In my mind, pragmatically, I think the blockchain is supposed to create more ownership, transparency, and pay back royalties and licensing. Do we feel like that's the case for artists, or is there still some work to do there? How do we have lawyers join in on the collaborative model between technology and artists? Iris, maybe you have a perspective on that?
I'm sorry, could you rephrase the question?
Just how do we feel like the model behind NFTs allows for protecting artists and protecting their art law and ownership?
Not necessarily, no. I think that the NFT technology it's not there to protect artists. It's to allow them to, in terms of how it's being used, it allows them to create that authentic, original signature on the blockchain and to monetize their art. I think in order for us to actually protect people's rights and make sure that there isn't plagiarism or people are not, copying someone's art and selling it as an NFTs, I think we're going to need additional tools to be built. I know that there are people that are working on that, but I think that those tools are yet to come. And so if there's anyone who's looking to solve a problem in the NFT space, that's one that I think could become a very, very profitable business.
Noemi, are you nervous about that?
Nervous about in regards to just not having protections, or?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, that already exists now. So it's like, in a way, it's nothing new. But on the flip side, fortunately, everything's connected. So I think the process of implementing artists being protected in the NFT space also informs artists on how to be protected in other projects, which, again, they may not even be aware of. A lot of artists who work in commissioned work aren't fully aware of licensing and how that works and what's involved in that and how lucrative it could actually be, because there isn't much information provided to it. So that could actually be a benefit, when there's more talks about protections and hopefully inciting thought to the other spaces in which artists, share their work.
All right. Andrea, I see you back on. Does that mean that we're getting the play out music?
Almost. I think that we do have one more anonymous question. Someone wanted to know if we have any tips for students with a non-technical crypto background to pivot into the space. I was wondering if anybody had any info about that one for us.
I think it depends on what they're trying to do. So if students with a non-technical, so they're crypto, but non-technical
crypto background. I guess they don't, for students with a non-technical crypto background. So that's
technical.
They want to pivot into the space.
Yes. So I think, okay, I may not be answering that question specifically. What I can answer is, what are the different kinds of roles that you can take on in this space? So one is community building. Okay, so these are people who do events, they build out discords, they essentially try and create, bring people together and kind of facilitate that process of bringing people together in the hopes that people will actually build real connections and real relationships that will last for a long time, right? That's one of the things that my company does. We're building a community, and we have community builders that are on our team. Almost every major NFT project also has community builders. So you need people like that. You need people who can do marketing and communications. So, creating content, people who can create videos, articles, people who can do web design, right, for different projects. Like we just rebranded our website. We hired somebody to do the new website. We also have NFT projects that are coming out soon. Each project has its own website, so we have to get the websites designed for that as well. You also have, of course, being a collector, someone who actually goes and collects people's art. Some people are focused on different types of collecting. So some might be collecting NFT art, some might be collecting real estate. Most real estate in the Web3 space is actually sold as an NFT. So you can still collect that way. You also have, what else is there? You also have Discord techs. So these are not super technical roles like a web developer, engineer, but it still requires understanding how to actually set up the different settings on Discord and how to integrate bots and things like that. Because think of Discord as like a blank canvas, and then you can use bots to kind of construct this unique experience for your users. And so there's a lot of platforms and projects that are looking for Discord techs or Discord managers to help set that up. So those are some examples of the things that you can do.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you very much. People are still wanting to ask us some more questions.
Yeah.
Yeah, people just dropped in a really good question. Do you want to go for that one?
Well, there's a couple of good ones. One is, how do you own real estate in the space? Is that the one you're looking at?
That's the one. I'm gonna pull out here and let you guys go ahead and answer that question.
Yeah, I think the ownership thing is it's a very, very good question in terms of how do you own anything on the blockchain. And this is a very bad example, but I think it's a good thought exercise, and that is anything that you own in the blockchain space. Just imagine a serial number assigned to that asset. So if you have an image, a JPEG, a piece of art, or if you have a piece of real estate inside of a particular game, you actually have a serial number, a unique number, which we call a hash, that's assigned to that asset. So it's basically Noemi, we can go look on the blockchain, owns this specific thing. It is assigned to this particular address. We can verify it. We can go to etherscan.io and we can look and say uniquely, she is 100% the owner. Similarly, in these worlds that you see created in things like the metaverse, we've had this for a while in games. I can own a sword that helps me get past a particular level. And if I own that sword in Web 3.0, it is assigned to me because I can see that ownership in this global ledger that is the blockchain.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. This conversation has been so good. I can see people still want to keep talking, but we have got to let everybody get back to their day and get back to work and everything else that they're doing. So I just really want to say, we really appreciate all of you. I learned a lot about NFTs and Web 3.0 because I did not know a lot about that, each from such different perspectives. I think you guys opened up a whole new world for me, and I'm hoping that others felt the same way. Thank you for explaining it in a way that I feel like regular people can kind of understand it, and for our brands to really understand how they might do better with and what they're doing with NFTs. It's always our goal to give give you connections with tangible tasks that you can do, share, or implement from any of our events. And we hope that we did some of that for you guys today. Don't forget to register for some of our other upcoming events and webinars, and yes, to coming back to some live events. Yes. We'll be sending out a survey, and we really rely on your feedback. So please respond. We'll also send a recap with any links and resources and organizations that we talked about today. And again, I just want to thank you to all our panelists, everybody, Alicia, James, Iris, Noemi, and our ThinkLA staff for all your work in making this event possible today. And of course, thank you to everybody else out there. We really appreciate you. So please take care and be safe. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day, everybody. Bye-bye.